Fall and winter hiking can really provide some unique opportunities and a different kind of fun. In this video, I want to talk about some of the pros and cons of late season backpacking and give you some tips and tricks to make it a little more comfortable and a little more fun. So one of my favorite parts of late season hiking is that the air temperature is typically cooler. It's about noon right now, and the air temperature is in the high 50s. I think it's about 58 the last time I checked. So it makes it easier to kind of move with purpose, move with intent, and not get drenched in sweat. Makes it, for me anyway, it makes it a little more comfortable. I don't like being too hot. So one of the negatives that goes kind of hand in hand with those cooler air temperatures this late in the season is that you also have less sunlight. Sun sets a lot earlier. So you kind of have to adjust your expectations, maybe plan shorter mileage days. And if you are someone like me who really enjoys the walk, I'm not a big fan of spending a ton of time at camp. I like to be in motion, I like to be moving. I enjoy doing 20 plus mile days. This time of year, that's not always possible. So I have to kind of adjust my expectations a little bit and plan for longer nights at camp. Some people I know will download movies or TV shows. You know, maybe you're a parent or a small business owner and you don't have time in your daily life to watch a ton of TV or watch a ton of movies. Trips like this, a really good opportunity to get caught up on your shows, get caught up on all those movies your friends are talking about. I don't do that. I'm not a big fan of watching TV when I am on trail. I like to read, so I carry a Kindle. And what I like about a Kindle versus bringing a traditional bound book is that I can load that little memory bank up with as many books as it'll hold, and it never gets any heavier. So another thing to consider, and I would put this in the con row of my checklist, in this later season, this colder weather, you're going to have colder nights. So your pack weight's probably going to be heavier. You know, maybe you're carrying an extra insulation layer, maybe you're carrying a little thicker puffy jacket or a more stout quilt or sleeping bag. And individually, you know, if you're looking at a puffy jacket versus your normal mid layer, it's just a few ounces. If you're looking at a 20-degree quilt versus a 30-degree quilt, just a couple of little ounces. If you're looking at a stouter sleeping pad, something with more insulation, a higher R value, it might only be slightly heavier than the pad you're used to carrying. But in the aggregate, once you add all those extra ounces, item after item after item, your pack can get pretty heavy pretty quick, which also lends to shorter mileage and maybe being a lot more tired when you get to camp. To help a little bit with the pack weight, it's a good idea to bring things that are multi-purpose. So instead of bringing a base layer and a mid layer and an outer layer, maybe bring a little more stout base layer or a little more light mid layer, something that you can wear while you're active, while you're moving, if it's a little colder in the later evening or afternoon. And it's also something you can sleep in. So now you have one piece of gear that's doing two things. One tip I would give to make late season hiking a little more enjoyable is always have a backup plan. The trip I'm on right now is my backup plan. The original route I had planned for this weekend became inaccessible due to a massive snowstorm closing a couple of the highways I needed to travel on to get to my trailhead. So instead of sitting at home and moping, I just went to my plan B. And I think the art of the pivot is important in backpacking in general, but in particular in the months where weather can be so unpredictable. Something else I would put in the pro column on my list is that late season hiking can be a wonderful time to witness the changing of the season. to see the fall leaves, to see all that bright color, and great opportunity for photography. Where I am now, not a particularly great spot for that. But, you win some, you lose some. Another consideration, and I would call this a con, is that this late in the season, even though the snow may have started to fall, there's probably not enough accumulation nor enough melt off to fill up the seasonal water sources you may be used to. If you've hiked an area in the early summer or into the spring and you think to yourself, oh, I know where there's a creek, I know where there's a stream, you could get out here in the late season and be very disappointed. It's helpful to be a little more intentional with your water consumption and your water carrying. So, for example, I hiked this same trail in early June, and I started from the trailhead with 1 liter because I knew there's plenty of water, creeks all over the place. This trip, same trail, I started with 2 liters because my assumption is that a lot of those creeks and a lot of those streams will be gone. There's not enough new snowpack melting off to fill them up, and most of the snowpack from last year is gone. So you want to be a lot more cautious, a lot more careful about how you manage your water this late in the season. Something else to consider on these late season hikes with the cooler air temperatures and the sun setting so much earlier is that you are still working, you are still exercising, you are still sweating, and you're not going to dry as quickly as you would in warmer air temperatures. So wearing quick drying, lightweight clothing like this Outdoor Vitals Altitude Sun Hoodie is just a smart idea, because the longer you are damp and wet in colder temperatures, the more you put yourself at risk for things like hypothermia. And it's also probably a good idea to bring a backup, like another lightweight, comfortable, airy top to change into when you get to camp, so that you're not just putting your base layer or your insulation layer on top of a soaking wet shirt that you've been sweating in all day. So another big pro to hiking these late season hikes is solitude. I've been out 2 hours now, gone about 3 miles, and since I left kind of the trailhead sort of day hiker area, I haven't seen a single person. I haven't even heard another person. And the last time I was out in this area, I ended up walking an extra, I think, 3 or 4 miles to find a campsite, because the place where I had planned on camping was just too crowded. I don't think I'm gonna have that problem this trip. I have a suspicion I will have my pick of the campsites. So another little safety tip to share with you. When you're hiking in the spring and summer months, if you have to do a deep creek crossing, or you just take a bad step and you get your feet wet, not the end of the world and not a trip-ending accident. In these later season hikes, it really could be the difference between limping out cold and uncomfortable, or staying the night and having an epic adventure your friends will be jealous of. What I do in these late season hikes is I carry a pair of very, very lightweight, minimal sandals. So as soon as I get to camp, I will take off my hiking shoes and hiking socks, especially if they're wet, and change into my camp socks, dry socks, and these minimal sandals. And it's a very minor weight penalty that could have a major impact on your safety and comfort on these later season backpacking trips. So the last 2 points I want to make about these late season backpacking trips, and these are neither pros nor cons. This is just the reality of getting out into the backcountry this time of year, depending on where you are in the world. Some of this may not apply to you, depending on where you hike. But the first one is kind of an increased chance of animal encounters, especially bear encounters. You know, they are in that last minute rush to suck down as many calories as they can get before they go into hibernation. And the air temperature is cooler and the sun goes down a little earlier. And those are both conditions that bears enjoy. So you want to make sure you're being a little extra bear aware this time of year. Make sure you're storing your food properly, either in a bear canister like the one I'm carrying on this trip, or by learning how to properly execute a bear hang with a bear bag. You know, as you're moving down the trail, maybe make a little extra noise, you know, film a YouTube video. So you're just talking to yourself the whole time. And just be a little more aware of your environment and who else might be sharing it with you. The other point I want to make, and again, this could be different depending on where you live, but in a lot of the areas I hike in, this time of year, it's very likely that I will be sharing the trail with hunters. And this is another situation in which you want to be more aware of your surroundings and your environment. It's not a terrible idea to get like a bright orange or bright yellow vest or hat or some other item to make yourself more visible. You know, we can all share these trails and share the backcountry with respect to each other. We just have to be a little more aware. You know, nobody wants a hunting accident. Nobody. So, some food for thought, depending on where you live and where you hike. I hope you found some value in this video, and we'll talk again soon.